Good morning, scholars. Happy Wednesday. We are continuing on with the return of Toad today. By the end, you will turn in Wednesday, September 30th, ELA. Our objective is to publish a final copy of our opinion paragraph today. We'll do the read aloud, and then we'll work on the final copy. So here's where we left our story. Toad, Badger, and look, we do see Mole in the background with Rat. Here are the vocabulary words that will come up in our story. Our first word is expedition. Say it. Expedition. And that's a journey made for a particular purpose. On an expedition. Next word is immense. Say it. Immense. And that means tremendous, very large, or great. The literary tools that we have reviewed thus far are perspective, how someone sees or experiences something. Dialogue, the actual words used by the characters. And narration, who tells the story and how the story is told. With that, let's return to our story. Toad was quite alarmed at Badger's serious style of greeting, but the rat whispered to him, "Never mind, he's always despondent when he's hungry." They waited in silence, and presently there came another knock at the door. The rat, with a nod to Toad, went to the door and ushered in the mole. So there he is. "Hooray! Here's old Toad," cried the mole. "Why, you must have managed to escape, you clever Toad." How is Mole's reaction to Toad different from Rat and Badger? So Rat and Badger both were a little bit cold with Toad at first. They were still angry with him for the way he behaved, and I don't know if they quite approved of him escaping. But Mole is happy to see him. The rat, alarmed, pulled him by the elbow, but it was too late. Toad was puffing and swelling already. "Clever! Oh no," said Toad. "I'm not really clever, according to my friends. I've only broken out of the strongest prison in England, that's all, and captured a railway train and escaped on it, that's all." So Toad is receiving a compliment for his cleverness from Mole, and already his ego is fluffing back up. "Well, well," said the Mole, moving toward the supper table. "Supposing you talk while I eat. Not a bite since breakfast." And he sat down and helped himself to cold beef and pickles. Toad straddled the hearth rug, thrust his paw into his trouser pocket, and pulled out a handful of silver. "Look at that," he cried, displaying it. "That's not so bad, is it, for a few minutes' work? And how do you think I done it, Mole? Horse stealing. That's how I done it." So what's the right way for him to say this? That's how I done it. He should have said, "That's how I did it." That would be the grammatically correct way. "Go on, Toad," said the Mole, immensely interested. "Toad, do be quiet, please," said the rat. "And don't you egg him on, Mole. Just tell us what the position is and what's to be done, now that Toad is back." So Rat is not enjoying this storytelling as much because he doesn't want to humor Toad. But Mole has always been very interested in the adventures of Toad. "The position's just about as bad as it can be," replied the Mole. "Armed sentinels posted everywhere at Toad Hall." "It's a very difficult situation," said the rat, reflecting deeply. "But I think I see what Toad really ought to do." "No, he oughtn't," shouted the Mole. "Well, I shan't do it anyway," cried Toad, getting excited. "I'm not going to be ordered about by you fellows." So already we see Toad does not want to go along with whatever plan Rat has. Mole doesn't want him to either, and we can assume Rat wants Toad to do the right thing. By this time, they were all three talking at once, and at the top of their voices, when a thin, dry voice made itself heard saying, "Be quiet." And instantly, everyone was silent. It was the Badger. "Toad," he said crossly, "aren't you ashamed of yourself? What do you think your father would have said if he had been here tonight?" Toad, who was on the sofa by this time, began to sob. So Badger is not messing around at all. He is angry with Toad, and he feels like he should be ashamed of himself. "There, there," went on the Badger more kindly. Stop crying. We're going to let bygones be bygones. But what the mole says is true. There are guards at every point. There's no point in trying to take the place by storm. So Badger means he's going to forgive Toad and let go of what has happened. They're still going to be his friends. Then it's all over, sobbed the Toad, crying into the sofa cushions. I shall join the army. Come on, cheer up, Toady, said the Badger. There are more ways of getting back at a place than taking it by force. Now I'm going to tell you a secret. Toad sat up and dried his eyes. Secrets had an immense attraction for him, because he could never keep one. There is an underground passage, said the Badger, that leads from the riverbank right up into the middle of Toad Hall. Oh, nonsense, Badger, said Toad. I know every inch of Toad Hall. My young friend, said the Badger, with great severity, your father told me a great deal he wouldn't have dreamt of telling you. He made me promise not to tell you about it unless you really needed to know. So Toad's father told Badger something that he didn't tell his own son. Why do you think he would do that? We can assume that Toad's father also knew that Toad was irresponsible and couldn't be trusted with this information. The other animals looked hard at Toad to see how he would take it. Toad was inclined to be sulky at first, but he soon brightened up. Well, well, he said. Go on, Badger. How's this passage of yours going to help us? I found out, continued the Badger, that there's going to be a banquet tomorrow night. It's somebody's birthday, and all the weasels will be gathering tonight in the dining hall. No weapons of any sort. But the sentinels will be posted as usual, remarked the Rat. Exactly, said the Badger. That is my point. The weasels will trust entirely to their guards, and that is where the passage comes in. That tunnel leads right up under the butler's pantry next to the dining hall. We shall creep out quietly into the butler's pantry, cried the Mole. With our pistols and swords and sticks, shouted the Rat. And rush in upon them, said the Badger. And whack 'em and whack 'em and whack 'em, cried Toad in ecstasy. Very well then, said the Badger, resuming his usual dry manner. Our plan is settled. We will make all the necessary arrangements in the morning. Toad slept till a late hour the next morning, and by the time he got down, he found that the other animals had already breakfasted. The Mole had slipped off somewhere, the Badger was sitting reading the paper, and the Rat was organizing an enormous pile of weapons. I think the job can be done without the need for weapons, Rat, said the Badger presently. It's as well to be on the safe side, said the Rat reflectively. The Toad, having finished breakfast, picked up a stick and swung it vigorously about him. I'll learn 'em to steal my house, he cried. Don't say learn 'em, Toad, said the Rat. It's not good English. So what should he have said? He should have said, I'll teach them. Also, we see that Rat is the one who wants to bring weapons into Toad Hall, which makes sense because remember when he went into the Wild Wood? He brought his pistol and his cudgel with him on his belt because he wanted to be protected, and he wants to be protected going into Toad Hall as well. What are you always nagging at Toad for? Inquired the Badger. What's the matter with his English? It's the same what I use myself, and if it's good enough for me, it ought to be good enough for you. I'm very sorry, said the Rat humbly. Only I think it ought to be teach 'em, not learn 'em. But we don't want to teach 'em, replied the Badger. We want to learn 'em, and what's more, we're going to do it too. Oh, very well. Have it your own way, said the Rat. Presently the Mole returned, and the four companions continued to make plans to recapture Toad Hall. When it began to grow dark, the Rat summoned them back into the parlor to prepare for the coming expedition. When all was ready, the Badger took a dark lantern in one paw, grasped a stick with the other, and said, Now then, follow me. Mole first, because I'm very pleased with him. Rat next, Toad last. The Toad was so anxious not to be left out that he did not protest. So he ordered up his friends in ranks of how pleased he was with each of them, and of course Toad was last. With Badger leading the way, they soon found themselves in the secret passage. It was cold and dark, and Toad began to shiver. The lantern was far ahead, and he could not help lagging behind. Then, fearful of being left alone in the dark, Toad hurried forward and bumped into Rat. The Badger thought they were being attacked and drew a pistol. He was on the point of putting a bullet into Toad when he discovered what had really happened. He was very angry and said, "Now this time that tiresome Toad shall be left behind." But Toad whimpered, and the other two promised to look out for him, and at last the procession moved on. So Rat was so on edge that when Toad bumped into him, he thought they were being attacked, and he started to draw his weapon. But Toad was just afraid of being left alone in the dark, so he was following him very closely. They shuffled along till at last the Badger said, We ought by now to be nearly under the hall." Then they heard a confused murmur of sound, as if people were cheering. The passage now began to slope upward, and then the noise broke out again, very close above them. "Hooray, hooray, hooray!" they heard, and the stamping of little feet. "What a time they're having," said the Badger. "Come on." They hurried along the passage till it came to an end. There they found themselves standing under the trap door that led up into the butler's pantry. Such a tremendous noise was going on in the banqueting hall that there was little danger of their being overheard. The Badger said, "Now all together," and the four of them put their shoulders to the trap door and heaved it back. Hoisting each other up, they found themselves standing in the pantry. The noise they heard as they emerged from the passage was deafening. At last, as the cheering and hammering subsided, a voice could be heard to say, "Well, I should like to say one more word about our kind host, Mr. Toad. We all know Toad." And then everybody laughs. Modest Toad. So, modest here means humble. Is the Toad actually modest? No, he's not humble, he's conceited. So the Wildwooders are being sarcastic about Mr. Toad. "Just let me get at him," muttered Toad. "Hold hard a minute," said the Badger, restraining him with difficulty. "Get ready, all of you." The Badger drew himself up and took firm grip of his stick, glanced round his comrades and cried, "The hour is come, follow me," and flung the door open wide. My, what a squealing and a screeching filled the air. Here they are all in the dining hall, confronted. Well might the terrified weasels dive under the tables. Well might the ferrets rush wildly for the fireplace and the chimney therein. Well might the tables and chairs be upset when the four heroes strode into the room. They were but four in all, but to the panic-stricken weasels, and before long the Stouts, Toad Hall seemed full of monstrous animals, and they broke and fled with squeals of terror. And so Toad Hall was reclaimed. "Mole, you're the best of fellows," declared Badger to Mole. So impressed was he with how valiantly Mole had fought. Toad felt rather hurt that Badger hadn't complimented him on how splendidly he had fought. But Toad put aside his jealousy and thanked Mole for his help. "Toad," said Badger, "you must have a banquet to celebrate." Thinking immediately of all the speeches he would make and songs he would sing about his own leading part in the fight, Toad puffed up with conceit once more. He became so inflated that his friends suspected right away what Toad was up to. "Now, Toad," said Rat, "we want you to understand there are going to be no speeches and no songs, especially as your songs are all self-praise and gas," put in the Badger. "And it's for your own good, Toady," went on the Rat. "You know you must turn over a new leaf sooner or later." Toad thought a long while. "My friends, you shall never have occasion to blush for me again," he said. "But oh dear, this is a hard world." And so he was indeed a changed Toad. As the weeks and months went by, many tales were told of the great siege at Toad Hall. Toad became a more thoughtful Toad, and life on the riverbank continued, as did the friendships of the creatures with whom you have just become acquainted. And that's the end of our story. I've been reading it for so many weeks, and it finally came to an end. Was Toad a changed Toad at the end of this story? He was. It said that months and weeks passed, and Toad became more humble, and he was truly changed. Why do Badger and the others want to use an underground passage in this chapter? They need to secretly get into the house, and the sentinels are posted outside. Where does this passageway lead? Into the pantry under Toad's house. Before today's chapter, do you think Toad would have been able to put aside his jealousy and thank his friend before all of his adventures? Probably not. He was not the type to say thank you to anyone. Do you think Toad has changed since we first heard about him? He has. In this chapter, it really seems like his friends have helped him change or turn over a new leaf. He is humble, he's forgiving, and at the end of the chapter, he is changing his ways. It says that he did change his ways and they continued living on. All right, so today what we are going to do, we are going to finish our opinion paragraph. Yesterday, you should have typed up your 3 detail sentences and a conclusion sentence. We're going to refer back to that today. So at this point, I would like you to split your screen. Your first step is to pull up your opinion writing from yesterday. So not the Wednesday post for today. I want you to go back to Tuesday, open up the opinion writing document that you already turned in. You need to be able to reference it when you are writing out your final draft on paper. It looks like this, so you should have your sentences filled in much like mine. What we are going to do today is we are going to take it all down and write it nice and neatly as a paragraph. So now you're going to get out your notebook and you are going to write down your opinion paragraph. Yours is going to look different from mine. It shouldn't have the same middle sentences or conclusion sentence, but we do have the same first topic sentence. So our first step, once we get out that piece of paper from our notebook, you can leave it in the notebook, is to write the title, Toad's Irresponsibility. Notice I underlined it and then I skipped a line. That way I could go right on to my topic sentence and it'd be clear where the paragraph begins. Another thing to note, when you first start writing your topic sentence, you want to indent. This makes it clear where the paragraph begins. You won't pick up in the same spot here next. Instead, you would go back to the beginning of the line. So this sentence continues on here, even though it was indented on the first line. So you write your topic sentence. In my opinion, Toad demonstrates the theme of irresponsibility. The next step on your outline are the 3 boxes in the middle. Instead of writing them in a line or one on top of the other stacked, we're going to continue writing them on the next line. So on this line right here, we start the first sentence. First, Toad demonstrated the theme of irresponsibility by stealing a motor car and driving recklessly, period. I have my capital at the beginning, my period at the end, and then I don't skip down to the next line. Instead, I just keep going right here. Next, Toad put on a disguise and escaped from prison, period. And then my last sentence. Finally, he stole the barge woman's horse because he was angry at her and the barge wrecked, period. Those are the 3 boxes in the middle of your outline. The next step is your conclusion sentence. Just like we wouldn't write TS because that means topic sentence and we already wrote out the topic sentence, we're not going to write CS, which means conclusion sentence. Those are outline tools, which is fine when we're planning our paragraph, but now that we're in our final draft, we eliminate the outline tools and we just write, as you can see, comma, Toad is extremely reckless and demonstrates the theme of irresponsibility, period at the end. Your conclusion sentence might sound different than mine because I want you to use the one you came up with yesterday. Now, of course, if you see it and you think, I can do better than that, please do improve your writing. That's the point of writing so many different drafts, is to get the best piece of writing possible by the end. But I want to know what you've written, not what I've written. So make sure you're not just writing down what I have here. Once you're done with that, you're ready for the next step. When you're done writing it out on paper, what I want you to do is go through this checklist. So pause on this screen and double check everything. 1, do I have a fitting title? So Toad's irresponsibility. 2, do all of my sentences start with capital letters? If not, go fix them before you take a picture. 3, do all of my sentences end with the correct punctuation? So do they all have periods or exclamation points? 4, have I spelled all my words correctly? 5, have I used correct grammar? So does it sound right? And 6, does each sentence provide a complete thought? So is it a sentence or is it a fragment? If I don't have a subject or a verb, you need to make sure that you do. So who and what is answered in each sentence. Once you're happy with it, then you're going on to the next step. So once you have your written copy done and you are happy with it, what you need to do is open this final draft opinion paragraph in today's assignment listing. You are going to take a picture of your written work for me and then submit it. So there's no actual work to do in this Google slide. You're just taking a picture of the paper that you have written on already. So in today's presentation, the first slide will have your instructions. It says on the next slide, that's this one, click Insert, so that's up here. Click Image, right at the top. Click Camera, so it has the picture of a camera. And then you're going to take a picture of your paragraph and insert it. So I'm going to go to my next slide, click Insert. If you're ever not sure what the instructions are, you can see the preview right here, and it's large enough that you can read it. Click Insert, Image, Camera. You'll see Miss Go will pop up. Here's my camera screen. So I would take the paragraph that I've written, hold it up so that it is centered, just kind of peek around the side like that. Hold it nice and still, and then you're going to click the middle button, so the camera button, not insert, because you can't insert it until you take a picture. So I'm going to click Camera, and there's my picture. You'll see it on this side. If it doesn't look right, you can take another. So I can hold it up again, hold it so still, that way I can see it. Make sure you've got good light coming in, that way I can actually read the words. And then you can pick the one that looks the best. So I think my first one is actually the winner. I would click on that one and hit Insert. Now, you'll notice it goes in kind of small. That's okay if you don't want to bother resizing it, but if you do, just drag on the corner here. So see my mouse? I go right above the corner and I pull. I click and pull it. And then the picture of my paragraph is there, as well as half of my face looking around and showing you my paragraph. That's how you're going to insert the final draft of your opinion paragraph so that I can grade it. So again, to find that work, it was under week 4, September 28th. Then go down to Wednesday, September 30th, ELA, final draft opinion paragraph. When you're done, don't forget to turn it in. Don't turn it in without the photo of your paragraph. That's going to get sent back to you or marked incomplete. So finish writing your paragraph on paper and then take your picture and turn it in. That's it. If you have any questions, please call or text me. Have a great rest of your day.